Hey, what's up YouTube? So for this video, I wanted to check out a couple of audio related accessories. Now this isn't necessarily like a top 3 kind of thing, but just 3 accessories that I had in for review and I thought were really cool. So first up, we've got Fiio's RM1. Now what exactly is the RM1? Well, essentially, it's pretty much a universal remote. I say pretty much because it does not apply to Apple products as far as I know. Basically, you connect it to your Bluetooth device and then you can play and pause songs, you can skip, you can change the volume, etc. Now this will work for all of Fiio's Bluetooth enabled devices, and it will also work for, which I can confirm, the Shanling M2S and the Hidiz AP60. So chances are that for all the other ones like the KNs, your Astel and Kerns, it should work for those as well, but that's not really guaranteed. So we get a couple of extra things with it. This over here, kind of funky looking plastic thing, is basically just a holder where you can pop the RM1 into, and then it's like a more conventional remote kind of thing, and just pop it back out. Easy peasy. Then we also have this little round thingamabobber, which you also just pop it in, and then this goes onto your car's steering wheel, which is kind of cool. And then lastly, there's also a little hole here for a lanyard, so you can attach it to your keyring. So what is the use of a device like this? Well, for one thing, like in the car, if your car's audio system is not equipped with Bluetooth and it does have an auxiliary input, for example, then you can connect your Bluetooth enabled device via auxiliary to the car and then connect this to the DAP and then control it that way. So because obviously your car's steering controls, if it has those, are not going to work. They're not going to skip the songs or change the volume on the player itself. It also won't pause it, of course. Another cool feature is that, and I've tested this with the M2S, if I connect the M2S to my IFI micro black label, then I can still connect this via Bluetooth to the Shanling, and I can still control the playback that way, which I think is kind of cool. If you want to use something like the IFI, if you want to use that in a more desktop kind of way, but connect your Shanling or other compatible DAP to it, then you can still use something like this to control it. You don't actually have to interact with the player itself, which I think is pretty neat. So the nice thing about the RM1 as well is that it does have a replaceable battery, and that's just a standard CR2016 button cell like you'd find in a wristwatch. And that's quite cool because you don't have to recharge it, which means that once the battery starts going funky in a device that has a built-in battery, then chances are you're not going to send that device back to the manufacturer for warranty repair, and that tech would then just render it obsolete and you just throw it away. You might buy another one, you might not. Whereas if you can just replace it with a cheap enough button cell like the CR2016, then you could end up using this device potentially for much longer than you first anticipated. So another pro of the RM1 is that the cost. It's only $25, which I think is very reasonable for such an accessory. Okay, so what about some negatives? Well, for some odd reason, and actually the sleep function isn't odd, but the timing is. If you don't use the device, if you don't press any buttons for a set period of time, then the RM1, even if it's connected to a device, will go into sleep mode. Now that timing is 11 minutes, which just seems like a really weird number to have been chosen. But you know, if you do press a button, then it wakes up and then it will pair with the last paired device again. Then the last con would be the battery life. Now Fiio says that it has a 1-month battery life. I'm not sure how many times a day that would be of using it, but you know, a longer battery life would have been nice, but still 1 month is perfectly fine. So yeah, overall, it's just such a cool little device, and I mean, all the things that you get with it, that you can basically transform it into a more useful device depending on what situation you might find yourself, I think is just really, really neat. Okay, so the next cool little device is IFI's Ear Buddy. Now this is kind of similar to the IE Match device that they previously brought out with, but where the IE Match had a high and ultra setting for the impedance setting, the Ear Buddy is just fixed. Okay, so what's the whole purpose of the Ear Buddy and indeed the IE Match? For one thing, for very sensitive IEMs that might pick up on hiss with various devices, whether it be a DAP or an external DAC or amp, this type of device will cut out the hiss. The other marketing strategy that IFI is going with is saying that it will restore the resolution and therefore make your music sound more detailed. Now there is some merit to what they're saying, in the sense of when something is like in a player, most of them would have digital volume control. Now with digital volume control, what it would do is by dropping the volume, it will also drop the amount of bits that it's putting out. So if it's like a 16-bit, it might go down to like 14 bits, and those two figures are the ones that IFI are using for their marketing. So by increasing the volume, you're increasing the amount of bits that are playing. So the amount of bits that are being output. So with the Ear Buddy, pop that into your player, and obviously because it now makes it more difficult for the player to output a certain amount of volume, you have to turn up the volume to get back to your preferred listening levels. But by doing so, you're also putting back those quote-unquote lost bits. Okay, so who is the Ear Buddy for? Well, I must say, on my recent flight, I was traveling on an Emirates A380, and the in-flight entertainment system actually produces quite a lot of hiss. I took my Hi-Fi-Man RE400s with me, and yeah, it produced a lot of hiss, whereas plugging this in and then putting the Hi-Fi-Man into this, there was absolutely no hiss. So there's an advantage right there. Another advantage would be that this little thing only costs $20, and that also includes some earplugs, a little case, and a airline adapter. So for 20 bucks, you know, given what it does, what it offers, very, very reasonable. Okay, so some negatives. I would say that the Ear Buddy attenuates too much. IFI quotes it as dropping levels by 16 dB, which, you know, I think it should have been 14, possibly rather 12, just because you have to turn up the volume. For, let's say, for example, the Shanling M2S, on low gain, I have to take it all the way to 100% volume to get to a decent listening level, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, you know, given that it's putting back resolution. But it does mean that you would use more battery, whether it be from an external amp or from the player itself. You'd use more battery because it now has to drive what the player thinks is a harder to drive set of headphones. Okay, so lastly, we've got this little gadget, which is Fiio's BTR1. Now this is a very, very interesting little device, little gadget. It's a compact Bluetooth DAC and amp. Basically, you connect this via Bluetooth to your mobile device or to your dedicated music player, and this would then stream it over Bluetooth, and you just plug in your headphones or earphones into here, which might seem like something that is cool but very unnecessary. So who is this for? Let's say that you've purchased something like the X7 Mark II. Now the X7 Mark II isn't a particularly compact device in the sense of putting into your pocket. It certainly can be done, but it's not, if you're wearing a pair of like skinny jeans, yeah, it's not going to happen. So where the BTR1 would come in is, let's say you're on public transport and you just don't feel like, or you're not able to take something like the X7 Mark II and put it into your pocket. If you've got a bag, then you can leave your player in the bag and just connect this. So in that scenario, yeah, this is a very viable solution. Now in terms of sound, the BTR1 actually does surprise you, given how compact this little device is. And given that for the type of scenarios that you would end up using this device, you know, you're really not going to notice much of a difference between this and a high-end player, especially if you're, you know, on public transport, or if you're not in an ideal kind of situation to really pick up on the slight nuances that you might get between something like this and a really high-end player. So let's have a quick look at the buttons that we get on the BTR1. So over here we've got the plus and minus. These would obviously be your volume buttons, but they're also used to fast forward and rewind and skip tracks. And we've got your 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. This is your power button. It's also your special effect button, which we'll get into just now. And it's also your play and your pause and your answer and end for making calls. And we'll see right over here somewhere, just behind this clip. I doubt that we'll see that on the camera. There's a little microphone hole, so for taking calls. Now on the back we've also got a clip. You can see the little clip is a little bit misaligned. Well, no big deal, but you can clip this on. And then finally at the bottom we've got a micro USB charging port. Switching on the device, very simple, just holding in this over here and we should see the blue LED start flashing. There we go. And that's connected to my Shanling M2S. And if you can see over here, there's a little A. If the camera focuses, there's a little A, which means that it is connected via aptX. And it is busy playing. So if I press this, then it pauses. Press it again and it starts playing. I can drop the volume. Okay, well, okay. So holding in, that would skip. But if you just press once, then it should change the volume on the BTR1 itself, not on the player. Because on the player, I would have to do it manually, which isn't a big deal. Okay, and then lastly, we've got the special effect, which if we double click, then we'll see that LED. I don't know if you can see that it's turned green. It just adds a little bit of spatial DSP trickery, which I don't know how many people are actually going to find that useful. I think this function would have been better served for maybe a little bit of a bass boost. But whatever, it is what it is. It's just a little added feature. Okay, so one of the negatives for the BTR1 is that it, obviously because it's such a small device, it doesn't put out a lot of power. The amount of power on tap is about the same that you get from the Fiio M3 and a little bit less than what we get from the Hades AP60. So it's about 30 milliwatts into 32 ohms. And you max that out pretty quickly with more demanding headphones. And then the last disadvantage would be the battery life, which is capped at around 8 hours or so. So this isn't terrible, but it would have been nice if it was a little bit longer than that. And then finally, the price. Now, depending on where you buy it, whether it's on Amazon or whether it's on AliExpress maybe, you can find the BTR1 for between $50 and $70. I think the MSRP is about $50 or $60, which actually for this kind of device is really, really reasonable. So there we are. I hope you guys enjoyed this little overview of these three accessories. If you've got any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll check you in the next one. Cheers, YouTube.